I wonder what would happen in this scenario if you actually watched something that had the actual song in it. But anyway, that's not what we're going to talk about today.
It comes out as Never Gonna Give You Up.
There you go. By Rick Astley.
Oh, that's another thing. You choose the Kenny Loggins thing, you never get Rickrolled.
There you go. It's never going to happen again. Although, who's living in fear of being Rickrolled anymore?
I got Rickrolled the other day.
Did you really? Did I tell you I actually got somebody, like, legit got this guy named Larry, and we were when I was doing the Mystery Science love theme remixes, and it was a part of that. It was a group kind of effort, and I forget which remix we were working on, but it was one of those things where you're passing something back and forth. All right, you do this for a day or two, then you get back to me. I had a partner kind of thing, and so I was like, oh, I got this new really cool breakdown for the blah, blah, blah thing. I go check it out, and I sent it to him on the DM, and I actually recorded it so that it started. It was a 30-second clip of my part, but it actually went for 15 seconds, and then...
The best one I've seen is a meme.
Oh, yeah?
That says 90% of Americans don't know the opposite of these words. Always, coming from, take me down. And so as you read it, you automatically think the opposite, never going to
That's
give
right.
you
Oh, that's clever.
Yeah.
It's an actually clever meme. Well, we can't just talk all day about nonsense, Sean. We have to actually have a discussion about something.
About nonsense from the box.
Which is a box of nonsense. And last month, I was the guy.
Or last 2 weeks ago. We haven't decided how many
We haven't
episodes
decided yet, but the last episode, for sure, I picked out of the Gish box. So it is now your turn. We should warn each other when that happens.
Also, don't get lazy. It's not Gish. It's Gsh.
Gsh.
Say it right.
Okay.
Now say it right or pay the price.
Get it right or pay the price is from Camp Anawana.
We hold you in our hearts. Yep. All right, here we go.
And his name was Ugg. Why? Because his last name was?
Ugnowski?
Lee. Okay. Ugly.
Oh. I hold the Calvin Ball.
All right.
For episode 5 of...
The box stayed in one spot, by the way, when everything shook. That was weird.
It's
got its own gravity.
It's made from the heart of a dwarf star. All right.
What do we got today, Sean?
Today's topic is...
Why are you standing? Oh. Stand up.
I thought it was a command.
Stand up. All right, throw it. Yeah, hey, there you go. Good for you.
I hit the monitor, not the lens.
It's good enough.
It's good enough.
Good enough for government work.
Yeah, we'll fix it in post.
So yeah, today on the show that I don't want to say because everything will fall off the walls, is about stand-up comedy. And yes,
Now I get it.
Remain seated. That's, I mean,
Oh, we're gonna make some people jealous.
oh god, yeah, because we're so funny.
No, no, because if we're talking about stand-up, we have to talk about the stand-up shows we've been to.
We've actually seen some really great comics live. Yes.
Yeah, and you know what?
Starting with,
Hold on, don't even say it yet. But there's a comedian that we have seen live that people cannot go see live anymore.
he's dead.
Yeah, it makes it real hard. And he's one of the fucking greats. Every single time I tell someone I saw this person live, they're like, oh, you fucker.
So let's say it together. 1, 2, 3. Howie Mandel.
He's alive.
Theoretically. Like, yeah, I guess he's a, yeah.
I mean, it depends.
Yeah.
Do you judge the life of someone by how much hair they have?
Because if I did, yeah, he'd be dead. No, yeah, George Carlin, the great George Carlin. We were lucky enough to see him. And I'll tell you this, the thing that sticks with me these many years later was that was a time in George's career where George was every bit as prolific, if not more. I mean, he was like the most prolific he'd ever been at that point, you know, and and there were a lot of people in the audience that one could tell only bought a ticket because they saw him host the Tonight Show in the 70s, or they liked Car Wash, or they remember the 7 Deadly Words or whatever. Like, they're not up to date.
Or the hippy dippy weatherman.
Right, exactly. And
a bunch of old white Republicans is what you're saying. Because we're from Sarasota, Florida.
It is Sarasota, yes.
So a bunch of old white Republicans are the same people that walked out of the pussy eating scene in the Burns Court Theater showing of Chasing Amy.
Right, probably.
And now here they're at George Carlin going, wait a second. When did he turn against capitalism?
Oh, yeah, right. Like, yeah. Do you think Al Sleet was the product of a guy who was like, had a fucking 401k? I don't think so. But yeah, that feeling was evident from the second he got on stage, because he didn't do any of the 10 minutes. Like, we'd seen other people. This is at the Van Wezel. This isn't at the comedy club, the McCurdy's Comedy Club. This is at the Van Wezel. And it wasn't like other comedians that we had seen at the Van Wezel. At the Wezel, where they do, I mean, I'm used to calling it the Weasel. But where they do, you know, the customary 10 minutes of, you know, I'm in this town, so I'm going to do 10 minutes of jokes about this town.
Oh, yeah.
George didn't do any of that. George didn't even do Hello, Sarasota. George came on stage. People lost their minds, and he actually looked annoyed. Like, all right, I got to get to this. And the second they started to die down, he goes, you know, something people don't talk about in public anymore? Pussy farts. That was it. I was like, thank you, George. Because I heard my dad groan, and he was next to Sheila's daughter. 2 people who do not belong in a George Carlin audience. No offense, Dad.
I didn't even remember they were there. Any of them. I thought it was just us.
Why would you?
Like when we saw Howie Mandel at the same venue, it was just you and I.
We went
I mean,
together.
there was an audience.
No, we went together. Yeah, but we went together even though Janine and her boyfriend at the time were in like several rows back.
Oh, well, we were in the front row, dead center.
Because Janine told a story for many years after that about how, like, you know, she was
but
watching.
we didn't go together. We didn't leave. We didn't go to the same place afterwards either. Correct.
But Janine told a story for many years, because we did see her at one point while we were there. And I think she was with Twiggy. But she said for many years, she was like, it was the craziest thing, because my friends are these 2 goofballs that all have that everyone has stories about. And then there I am one day going to see Howie Mandel. I didn't know they were there. And then all of a sudden, Howie starts talking to these 2 obnoxious goofballs in the front row. And then
and they're my best friends.
They're my best friends. And he's talking about how stupid their names are and how stupid they're being. And I remember also, so this was the Renob and Spooge stuff we were talking about several episodes ago, and now we went by those names.
You remember. I mean, you take prodigious notes on every episode, right?
For sure. And I remember...
Oh, shit. We forgot to tell. There's going to be a test. There's a test at the end of the season.
Did you bring your number 2? Stand-up was definitely always a part of our little culture, I guess.
Do you remember... when you, first watched stand-up?
Yes.
Because I don't have a recollection of that for me, so please tell your story.
Now I say this with the mother of all disclaimers.
Oh my God.
You know who I'm going to say.
Oh, yes.
He was not just my hero.
He was the greatest.
Bill Cosby was a lot of people's heroes. And he was really
watched
fucking
his stand up with you, and we laughed our asses off.
I saw him live at the Van Wezel.
Oh, I did not see him live.
I got to see him live. He had I don't know if it was his bit. I think it was an old vaudeville thing, but there was a funny thing he did where, as the audience was coming in, because, they usually have the curtains open and you can see the set, as people are coming in. And as you're doing, as people are letting in, there's a chair on stage, and everyone who knows Cosby knows he's a sit-down comedian. Probably the only one of his kind, with the exception maybe of Patrice O'Neill and Ralphie May, but they're fat and dead. So, you just see that chair up there, and after like 20 minutes, a stagehand comes out, lifts it up, leaves. 5 minutes later, comes back with a different chair. And this keeps going on and going on with the chairs getting more and more grandiose until finally, when everyone's finally in there, he comes up, picks it up, angrily leaves, and then comes back and then doesn't even walk all the way to the center and just throws a folding chair angrily into the center of the stage. And then Cosby walks in, looks at it, looks off camera, goes, so hard to hire good service these days. And then he comes out, and it was a very good show, despite my retelling of that. But it was Bill Cosby himself, to answer your question. And did you ever meet my godmother, Pat Tilson?
No, I didn't.
Okay, Jimmy met her then. Pat has memories of me doing, at age 5, doing material about my damn kids. Because I'm doing, Cosby's routines. So yeah, that one and the routine he did about Noah. Do you know
what's funny? I think I might actually know what my first
stand-up
act that I ever saw was. And it wasn't that young, but it was young, 8-ish, 9-ish. And it couldn't be more different. I believe that the first stand-up special I ever watched was Raw.
Eddie Murphy's Raw?
Eddie Murphy's Raw.
It's a good start, man. It's a good start.
Yeah. Yeah.
He had that whole bit about Cosby telling him not to cuss.
Didn't understand most of it for sure.
Or is that Delirious?
I don't know.
No, that is Delirious.
I remember.
Raw's red, Delirious is purple. Sorry.
I remember he was sweating a lot. Mm-hmm. And probably because of all the leather.
Yeah, God, yeah.
But, I loved Eddie Murphy. Like, I'd already seen Coming to America at that age, which, starts off with boobs. Strong movie, strong opening for a young child.
I remember I saw that horrible movie, which is not a sentence you can say very often, that horrible movie with John Goodman. But that horrible movie with John Goodman and Tom Hanks. Punchline, starring Sally Field. Remember Punchline?
No.
You're lucky. Because if you love stand-up, don't watch it. It's the 80s equivalent of they did it at the height of the stand-up boom in the 80s. But it's just so there's nothing about the way comedians are represented in it. Right down to the fact that they have lockers. They have lockers in the club, like comedians have their own lockers. No.
You wonder how stuff like that gets into a thing.
Yeah. I don't know how that worked. Like, was there a comic one day who insisted on a locker?
No. I really think that stuff happens like a screenwriter just is imagining how it must be backstage for comedians.
Yeah.
And they're like, I'll just write it down. I don't need to check anything.
Yeah. So.
Sorry, go ahead.
So stand up. Now, it's definitely ingrained in me a little more from as a kid, as I said, with the Cosby thing, but also because the only time that I ever, one hates to use this word, but shined as a kid, had moments where you're like, oh, I'm feeling fucking pretty baller, is if I made a movie and I showed it to the class, me and Anthony made a movie or something, and, but that's hit or miss, because if you make a crappy movie, then but what was a real big thing for me was the talent show. We had a talent show at Wayne Elementary every year, and 2 years in a row, I did stand-up. And it was the first time, and I know it's a much more scaled down fucking elementary version of it, but the fact is, and if I can find it, I'll put the video in, but my bully heckled me, and I heckled him back, and his fucking friends, you can hear them making fun of him on the video.
Let me ask you, is this a talent show with parents present?
Of course.
Those are the best because grown-ups
Why is that?
are obligated to laugh.
Yeah. But the kids are not.
I went on a cruise when I was 12 with my parents, and there was a talent show there, and I did stand-up, and I got laughs. I did not earn them.
Well, I mean, look, what kind of monster, what kind of a fucking savage watches a little kid doing stand-up like this?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I'm saying it's the greatest. If it's just in front of your peers, then you're in trouble.
Yeah.
But if there were parents there...
There were parents, but there were also kids who were not fans of me.
Yeah, but, parents... The thing is, kids doing that kind of stuff is funny. They're not laughing to be polite even. They're laughing because, oh, look at this child trying to do comedy.
It's the assumption
this
that
is
you
funny.
can... It's the assumption that, at that age, you can have your own agency enough to make observations that are comical. But of course, I didn't, because my material was written by my dad. But it was still a matter of sitting him down and going, I want to talk about Bugs Bunny and how do we make this funny?
My material on our cruise was original. I don't remember the jokes. I do remember that they were my own observations, put my own way. Despite my early influences, I did not drop any F-bombs.
Yeah. Or talk about coming in girls' faces or whatever the fuck Eddie was talking about.
I didn't even know what that was.
Yeah. I remember
I remember, side note, do you remember the movie Other People's Money with Danny DeVito?
Very good movie.
That came out, I believe,
Midler.
I was in 5th or 6th grade, or 6th or...
That's Ruthless People, sorry.
6th or 7th grade. Other People's Money with Danny DeVito.
I know it, yes.
He had the gold slinky.
Yeah.
You know what I love more than money? Other people's money. That was the trailer.
Yep.
So I remember I was in middle school when it came out. I was having a conversation with my friend at the time, Shane Taylor. And Danny DeVito has a scene in the movie where he makes a bet with a woman. He's like, well, what do you say we make a bet? $100 to whoever comes first. He's like, he's hitting on her, And me and Shane are discussing, women can come? Which, luckily we
didn't know they had dicks.
Luckily we were in middle school and
Something no one ever says.
Not in our 20s. Like a lot of guys who seem to have that same question.
Yeah. So, where was I? I'm going to talk about stand-up.
Pat.
Yeah, but we moved off of that.
Oh, well.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, I talked about Pat because Pat has memories of me doing Cosby.
Oh, yeah. Cosby.
But the other thing we did, the other time I did stand-up at a young age, the only time I actually did write my own material was when when the family was going to Jamaica for my dad's 50th birthday, and that that local hotel or whatever, they had like a talent thing for to keep the brats busy, and I don't remember any of the jokes, but I'll tell you one of the premises for my material. The premise is, have you ever noticed those jerk-offs or nerds or whatever word I would have used then, who always try to look so cool throwing popcorn in their mouths? That was the premise. It's a lot. It's like, what if nobody has? It's a pretty obscure premise. Like people shouldn't be buying into premises like this. Yeah, I mean, I guess. That's not how you... This is how you buy into a premise, huh? And then that's it. Yeah. That's a good premise. So we mentioned also...
So you don't want an overly specific premise.
No, like
for observational humor.
An overly specific, or any kind of humor, like Space Jam. Space Jam is a ridiculously involved premise, and I believe the term is hat on a hat.
It's like you ever notice how when you have to start my car, you have to turn the thing once and then turn it back?
My car. Yeah. You ever notice when your wife Denise says, "Hey"? But yeah, it is. It's very specific.
Or like, when your wife hides your prosthetic arm.
Yeah, right.
It's not really broad enough.
One of the first bonding moments we had with stand-up was probably Stand-Up Spotlight.
So yeah, this is what I've been waiting
with Rosie
to have an
O'Donnell.
opportunity to bring up is the 90s were really a fucking bright spot for stand-up because it was on television every week.
Well, you know what? We saw, like we did with the previous episode, we saw the end of radio, and we also witnessed the end of a stand-up boom.
Of TV stand-up,
Yeah.
Because, VH1 had the show Stand-Up Spotlight, hosted by Rosie O'Donnell and then Bobby Collins.
Who said that we were funny.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Yep.
Don't think I forgot that shit.
No.
Because that happened.
I was there.
But it was amazing being able, as teenagers, to turn on our our basic cable every week at 11 p.m. on
And it was basic.
Friday night or whatever on VH1. And
Also, there were Sunday comics on Sunday night.
yeah, and it was great because there was also the Apollo one.
Yes, at the Apollo.
Yeah, there was several. There was
We also had Comedy
Half
Central.
Hour Comedy Hour came later.
Premium Blend came at the tail
but
end.
in the 90s, every week we had Stand Up Spotlight.
Yes.
And the premise of Stand Up Spotlight was you had basically 4 comics. You had your host.
That was 3.
You had your host, Rosie O'Donnell, doing an introductory little bit. And then she would introduce the first comic and have a couple little jokes as she introduced the others.
And what was her gimmick?
3
Remember?
comics and the host.
Say the
Rosie would always come out and say a different name. She would say, "Hi, welcome to VH1 Stand Up Spotlight. I'm your host, Madonna." Or "I'm your host, Carmen Miranda," which when Rosie was leaving the show, now this is before Rosie's talk show where she was the Queen of Nice. Right. This was Club Rosie.
Yeah.
She was a whole different persona.
Yeah.
The persona that would eventually reveal itself to be her real persona when the Queen of Nice thing turned out to be a sham.
Yeah.
But she was the sassy lady. And we loved her prior to her daytime talk show.
Sure. I loved her then too, but
yeah. But it was different. Like
it was definitely a different brand.
We loved the original Rosie before we were the hipsters of Rosie O'Donnell.
Before she had a doll.
Yeah.
Remember that? We had a doll in the room. Yeah.
With the little string.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But then Bobby Collins was taking over, and we're like, no, fuck this guy. Straight out of the gate, he hasn't been on once. We're like, fuck this guy. We don't know who he is. I don't know his name. Yep. He can get right the fuck out of here. And then he came out on stage and he said, "Welcome to VH1 Stand Up Spotlight. I'm your host, Rosie O'Donnell." And I was like, okay.
And I think
he gets it.
I think in the long run, we liked Bobby better because, I mean, I don't know if Rosie had an album, but I didn't have it. No, I had Bobby's album.
Yeah. I don't know where Bobby Collins is now. You say Bobby Collins to somebody, they don't know his name.
He's just a touring comic.
Yeah, but, fucking funny guy. And, like, we still can quote, like,
I still love the fucking...
ashtray shot out, hit me in the stomach,
and a french fry came out of my mouth. I haven't had french fries in 10 years.
Like,
then there's also the other one we quoted a lot was the bit about the salsa and his dog. Hey, Bobby, you want them dog to north? Well, yeah, I'm gonna give this to you because I love you. I love you too.
But Stand Up Spotlight was the first place I saw Norm Macdonald.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
That was where he did the bit about the homeless guy with the dog, where I was like, this guy is not funny. And I'm sure if I watched that same bit now, I'd be like, this is hilarious.
This is
because the whole thing was like,
baller.
I saw a homeless guy the other day, and he had a dog. And I was like, what's going on here? I mean, he's got no home. He's got a dog. He's got no home.
And he kept going.
But he's got it over and over again.
The relentlessness was what was
and as a teenager, I'm watching it going like, okay, dude. The audience isn't getting it. They're not responding. Abort.
That took me a while. That took me to actually doing stand-up before I understood that. And I think I heard, it was a quote that I heard Bill Burr say, but it made so much sense having been on stage because he said that, he goes, look, I don't care how great you think you are. If you're up there and all of them are laughing, You're not doing it right. You need 70% of them laughing, and 30% of them are uncomfortable, and half the laughter is coming from the fact that that portion of the room is not digging it.
Yeah.
That's the funny. And I wouldn't have realized that after, going through it. But you're right. It's so...
I remember... So this is one performance I saw of him once in probably 1995. Mm-hmm. And I remember it. Like, I remember...
so impactful.
Yeah, I remember him saying, he's talking about cliff diving. He's like, I mean, there's really only 2 categories of cliff diving. There's grand champion and stuff on a rock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember.
And 95, I think, was the year, man. That was the fucking year, because it was also the year that Comics Come Home 3 came out to benefit the Cam Neely Foundation.
That's right.
I taped that off the television.
Yep.
I ran that tape into the fucking ground, and let's go through some of the comics we were introduced to in that.
One of my favorite comics of all time I saw for the first time on that. And he was the only one on the roster to have his own theme song. Colin Quinn.
Yeah. So it was hosted by Dennis Leary, who we were already...
It's also the first time I saw Louis C.K.
Yeah. Louis C.K. Dave Chappelle
was on there?
Yeah.
Wow.
Dave Chappelle. I still remember his bit. He's... Because I remember him and Louis C.K. both had bits about the cops. Louis C.K. was talking about how his horn would just go off like whenever.
Yeah, the cops.
Yeah. And then, and Dave had a bit about, last time I was in Boston, because it was in Boston, it was to benefit a Boston-based
Cam
thing.
Neely
And it was Comics Come Home, because it's comics from Boston.
Mm-hmm. Cam Neely
Bill Burr was there. What's his face? Louis... He was dressed as a cop.
The guy who did the Sully.
Yeah.
Fuck,
I don't remember. I remember his comedy, though. I remember him talking about, like...
you can't get there from here.
No. He was talking about, who here wanted to be an astronaut when they grew up? Did you even fucking try?
Oh, that's right. Did you fucking try?
I mean, he didn't say fucking because it was on TV, but he's like, did you even try?
Yeah. In fact, I remember us...
But hold on, but Dave Chappelle, he's like, last time I was in Boston, I had to bail my buddy out of jail, so that was uncomfortable. I'm here to bail my buddy out. Okay, sure.
That's right.
While you're here, you do match some descriptions if you'd like to come this way.
I remember the bit that Dave did at that time that stuck with me was, I think he did it on Def Jam, was the bit about how he used to work for Domino's, and he didn't use
Louis Clark.
Oh, that's right, Louis Clark. But yeah, Chappelle had a bit about Domino's and how he was like, he had to carry a piece just so he could deliver to the ghetto, and he's like, and I don't remember even the joke, but the only joke part I remember is when he's like, all right, which one of y'all motherfuckers is going to tip me?
But yeah, I mean, like, to be introduced to all those comics in 1995, a lot of them were not well known.
Let's talk about a legendary comic that we were both together introduced to by a person who is sadly no longer with us anymore, a friend of ours named Terry, who ran a wonderful video store called Video Renaissance in Sarasota.
Which also is dead.
Yeah, sadly. But nonetheless, we went in one day and we were looking for Dennis Leary because we were really big on No Cure for Cancer. And Terry said, rather famously, I mean, we have it, but why do you want to watch that?
Yeah, you could watch this bad Xerox.
Yeah. Or I could give you the original. And he gave us Sane Man. Was the one that we watched.
By
Bill Hicks, the great Bill Hicks. And dude, I remember, I do remember all of our big laughs together but I remember specifically like I don't know if it happened, but I do remember wanting to pause it just so we could catch our fucking breath. Hicks slayed us that night.
Uh-huh.
And, and he's still to this day one of my favorite comics of all time.
I think that ideologically I've moved on from a lot of the viewpoints he espoused in those, and I'm sure I would still find it funny even though I'm not like so conspiracy. Like, I get how some people think that Alex Jones is Bill Hicks having faked his death.
Can I tell you? Oh, wow. This is so weird. I had a dream when I was living in LA and doing stand-up. I had a dream that I met Bill. And it was like, I was up, I was doing a bringer show, and I got, invited into the green room, and I don't remember the circumstances of how I met him. I'm sure it was something as corny as just, hey, Bill Hicks is still alive. Here he is. But, I'm talking to him, and I'm like, so you're just.
I'm going to start introducing people that way.
What?
So Trevor Thompson's still alive. This is.
But I remember saying something to him about, so do you pay attention to the news and everything? And I said, do you know anything about Alex Jones? And he goes, I know who he is. And I go, do you know that there's people who legitimately believe that you are him or that he is you? And he laughed and he goes, yeah, well, I could never be as funny as Alex Jones.
That's good.
Yeah. It may have been Bill. It was like that, it was just funny enough. But Bill, I'm trying to think of I think the bit you're talking about in terms of the conspiracy was the bit he did about the JFK assassination. There's no fucking way. They don't want millions of tourists. Oh yeah, the way he worded it was the best, because he goes, now they've got it set up, the school book depository. They've got it set up to look like it did on the day, and it's very accurate because Oswald's not in it.
Yeah.
But Hicks, I see Hicks's influence. Let's talk about comedians that have died that we would dearly wish were still here for a while. Because I don't want to make this all sad. I see you getting kind of sad, but.
Do you know who I'm thinking of?
No, I don't. Robin.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's Robin. I know I was inconsolable when Patrice died, for a good week. I was like, I'm getting choked up just thinking about it. I love Patrice. Greg Giraldo. How much fucking great, I would have loved to have seen the Trump administration, channeled through Greg Giraldo's lawyer brain. Did you know that he was originally a lawyer?
No.
Yeah.
We forgot to mention on the last episode that Graham was a doctor.
Graham was a doctor. Yeah, Graham Chapman.
Ken Jeong is a doctor.
That's right. And he mentions that in his stand-up special, which is very funny, by the way, if you've seen it.
I haven't seen it.
It's very funny. Very
Do you
good.
know who was a lot funnier than I expected? I turned on this person's comedy, their stand-up act, expecting it to be kind of annoying. Turned out to be...
Can I actually guess?
Super, super funny. Go ahead,
Let me guess.
It's someone from a TV show that I really like.
TJ Miller?
No, I haven't seen his stand-up.
Because that was somebody who I was wrong about, where I thought I was going to find him annoying. I give up who?
Aziz Ansari.
Ah.
Because my main...
His stand-up does annoy me, actually.
Oh, really? I see, I expected a lot more Tom Haverford and for him to be like that the whole time. Right. But I really enjoyed his stand-up. Who is your favorite working comedian right now?
Oh, Jesus. That's not fair, dude. Make it something specific, like female, black, gay. Go specific. I can never.
Who's your favorite female, black, gay working comedian right now? No, come on.
Wanda Sykes.
Yeah.
Seriously.
She's the only one.
No, she's not.
No, she's not. But
she's not. Miss Pat is a fucking close second.
No, I think my favorite...
her daughter's gay, not her. Sorry.
I think my favorite working comedian right now is John Mulaney.
Mulaney's up there for sure.
Mulaney is one that I discovered 100% accidentally. because I was introduced to Brian Regan, who I love. And I went on Pandora and I discovered if you put in a comedian's name, then it will play you some stuff from that comedian, but also some bits from similar comedians. And I remember I was painting the ceiling of my house at the time and just listening to stand-up comedy. And it's cycling through these various comedians under the Brian Regan umbrella or through the Brian Regan algorithm.
I remember.
And every single time that I had to stop what I was doing to look at my phone and see who the fuck this brilliant, hilarious person is, every single time, it was John Mulaney. Mm-hmm. That's how I found John Mulaney. And every single time I had to skip forward because this is not funny and I don't know why it's recommending it to me.
Yeah.
It was Dane Cook.
Yeah, I don't hate Dane Cook the way a lot of people do. But, you know.
I just don't find him funny, and I find that his comedy seems tailored specifically toward douchebags.
Can I give you a compliment right now?
I mean, it would be very strange.
Well, hold on to something. I wish more people did what you did right there, because you didn't say, because I said I like him. Most people would have done this. No, he's not funny. You said, I don't find him funny. When people say that, it drives me up a wall, because as far as I'm concerned, you don't make a career on being unfunny. If you're an unfunny comic, you know what you're doing right now? Not comedy. You don't get to stay in comedy if you're not funny. So that's always bothered me when it's like, oh, I hate Larry the Cable. Larry the Cable Guy's not funny.
Look, Larry
the Cable Guy could buy and sell you, and he did it with laughs. Okay?
Comedy is subjective.
Exactly.
And not everybody has the same frame of reference to find certain things funny. So, for example, when Dane Cook is doing his bit about how you wash the triangle around your balls after you've cheated on your girlfriend, I don't have that frame of reference, and I don't really.
Well, nobody does, Sean. That's the point of it.
Don't really get the humor of.
Yeah, the point is, it's what we were talking about earlier, making a super specific example like it's something everyone has. Nobody has that. You have that because you're the dickhead that fucking.
No, I'm just saying, like, I went into Dane Cook with no preconceived notions about him. I had just heard that he was funny. That was it.
This would be back in the MySpace days, I imagine.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. But, you know, he was very popular at the time. And, I mean, I guess I had already seen him in Mystery Men.
Can we talk about
as the Waffler?
Can we talk about joke thievery, a la Carlos Mencia?
We're going to have to. We'll get there. But I just want to finish this thought on Dane Cook, is that, like, you know, he was popular. He had been recommended to me, as 1,000 other comedians have been recommended to me. So I went and I put on one of his specials, as you do. And I just...
This was back in 2005?
A little earlier than that. I think 2002, 2003, maybe there. I feel like it was when we were living in the same apartment complex.
If I might make a recommendation, he did a special at the Laugh Factory about 8 years ago, I think. It's really good. And the weirdest thing about it, you know how we were talking earlier about writing versus improv, and I thought it was like every other set. You know, he wrote it and did it like every other comic. He literally did not know, as he stepped on that stage, what he was going to do.
Now, I want to bring up...
He improvised it entirely.
I want to bring up 1997, if I can.
Just go see that special.
In 1997, you and I were conscripted, I would say, into hosting a concert.
Conscripted?
Yes.
I don't know what that word means. I don't think I've ever heard it before.
Conscripted. It's when you when someone is basically commanded to do something, I guess.
Okay.
You conscript soldiers to go to war.
So we were laugh soldiers.
We were asked to host a wildlife fund benefit.
And the idiot that fucking ran it, like many people that do this with stand-up, thought, yeah, people like to laugh. Why not get a couple of funny people to host it?
So we were just meant to like introduce the acts, basically, and we were fine at it. We were supposed to MC, but at some point there was a technical difficulty or something, and we had to kill time. And we thought, hey,
which was already our job.
Yeah, we had to kill an extended amount of time. So we thought, hey, let's just get up and wing some 2-man original stand-up.
You need to point out something. The one thing that you're forgetting. We had prepared material, and part of the reason why we resorted to improv, maybe not in this instance, but certainly that night, was because we wrote what we thought would be 2 hours worth of material. Well, 2 hours in between bands worth of material. And I think it was the third band, we realized we'd gone all the way to the end of our page of our paper. And we didn't have any more material. We were done.
Yeah. But it was not good.
No.
People.
That was also the night that we fucking
That was the night that we were almost murdered. It's true.
Yeah,
but that's a whole different story for a whole different podcast.
Different kind of podcast. But yeah, so why are you bringing that up?
You were talking about Dane Cook improving stand-up, and that's what we tried to do, and it was real fucking hard, and we were real bad at it, and that's why I have not gotten on a stage and tried to do stand-up ever again.
I'll tell you.
You are more brave than I, because you've been on stage many, 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 many times.
And listening, and just from a person who's had to listen to his own podcasts, you know what it's like going back.
Oh, I don't do that.
I mean, you've had the experience of going back and listening to yourself and going, "Oh, I suck." Imagine having to do that night after night just to get better. I mean,
that's why I only do podcasts with other people. So when I listen back, I can be like, oh, they're funny.
Yeah, at least someone on here is funny. But yeah, the struggle for me was because of so many years of us loving sketches and written stuff, and the emphasis for comedy on us was really just writing. I thought that the way that you had to write stand-up was, on paper, and you wrote it all out.
I love that you pointed to the computer and said paper.
Paper. Well, or how about that paper? But, you had to write it all out, long form, and that actually, there's less than a handful of comics that can do it that way. But what I found out for me was that the real problem was, if I'd written a paragraph or two of something, right, the way that I have a photographic memory. So the way I memorize is I see the whole thing. Now, by this time, I had the experience of being a DJ. No, you're not interrupting. I'd had the experience of being a DJ. I'd learned how to read a crowd. But with DJing, like the thing with Stan, I could quickly mix into something else and get us out of here. But if I was on stage and I was like 3 sentences into my material and I realized this isn't working, they were supposed to laugh 3 times, they laughed 0, I better move on to the next thing. I picture the rest of the fucking... So to go to the next thing, I have to stop and think what the last few lines are in the bit previous. And even if you're only up there like that long, you're fucking dead. They can sense you're dead. So the way you have to fucking go is like how when you tell all the great stories about our youth. If someone's starting to get bored, you switch over to another story. So that's how you have to look at it. You have to write it out in your head like it's a story and remember where the points are. And that allows you to, in real time, go, okay, this isn't working. Next story.
So here's why I wanted to interrupt. Because I've known you for 28 years.
I love interrupting you.
And I've literally never heard you mention having a photographic memory.
Well, that's how I memorize stuff, is I just look at it.
I just take photos of it and then I stare at that.
No, that's literally it. When I'm memorizing stuff, I'm seeing the fucking text in my head. Like I remember.
28 years, never mentioned it.
Well, I mean, when's it going to come up?
People, okay, from watching movies, my understanding is that people who have a photographic memory tell you every 15 seconds.
Do you know what, though? I'm not a movie character. Spoilers. But, spoilers about my life. But no, I mean, like I don't think it occurred to me until I had to go on stage that I had a photographic memory, because I realized that that's how I was memorizing it.
So you want to talk about joke thievery, right?
I would like to talk about joke thievery, especially since...
Well, hold on. I'm sorry to interrupt yet again. I'm interrupting Cow.
No.
Let's talk about joke thievery after this.
Fair enough. Got to pay some bills in this joint. So yeah, so one of the big moments in stand-up was, I want to say, about 10 years ago. At this point, maybe even 20.
It's probably longer, yeah, because we're older than we think we are.
Yeah. So Joe Rogan, well, Carlos Mencia was a guy.
Oh, do people know that Joe Rogan used to be a comedian, not just a podcaster?
Yeah. He's got 3 specials on Netflix. I love him. He did. So this was a time when his podcast was not very well known. It was like the first few years of his podcast. And he was going around doing a thing called Joe Show. And he had the guy that produces his podcast now, Redman, was his video guy. So he would follow him around to club and just film random stuff. And when this happened, thankfully, Brian had the camera on him and was ready. And he was like, oh shit, Joe's fighting with Mencia. So Carlos Mencia, for those that may not remember or don't know, had a show on Comedy Central at the time called Mind of Mencia. By the way, that's why I love Patrice O'Neill so much. Patrice had a fucking Comedy Central like meeting with executives to do a show, and he spent the entire time, first 5 minutes, just chastising all of them. Which one of y'all fucking renewed Mind of Mencia? And then when he starts heckling all of them, and then when they finally renege and they tell him the rest of the meeting, he just heckled the one guy. Seriously, you gonna tell me about funny? You put that shit out there? Fuck you, man. Like, to his face, fuck you. This dude could buy and sell Patrice, and I don't care. I love Patrice so much. Anyway, but yeah, Mencia was a very big deal at that time. And he had, among comedians, a reputation earned of not just like stealing, and not just what a lot of people say now, oh, collective consciousness, but no, literally in the back of the club, writing your shit down, and then sometimes he would even, if he knew
lifting 15-minute blocks of someone's act.
It gets worse than that. I found this out many years later. The assholery goes even further. Let's say I'm Mencia, you're you. You go up on stage, and let's say your closing bit when you're doing a real big show is about Hooters waitresses, right? But we're just at the comedy store, so you're not going to be doing your closing bit. But you go up, but I know you're about to go up after me, and I see you in the back of the club as Mencia. I see that Sean's here, so now I'm going to do the Hooters bit, your closing bit, and then as you're coming up, top that motherfucker right in the ear. After, like, openly stealing your closing bit, leaving you with nothing. So it's a little different from, oh, I thought about this, maybe. No. He was actively fucking people.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
and this is why he was called Carlos Mencia.
Which is what prompted the moment, because this isn't the part that's
was
not
this
on
your
stage.
Introduction to the concept of joke theft?
Fuck you.
No. I'm asking because I don't know.
This isn't a reference to the Python stealing stuff that I used to do.
No. No. You weren't stealing material. You were stealing
style.
Personality.
Yeah.
But no, I'm asking because I don't know that I was aware of
I think
joke theft in the stand-up comedy realm as a concept really prior to that. I know there was some Robin Williams allegations.
There weren't allegations. They were facts. He actually did.
Oh, wow.
Not only did he actually steal, but he had to pay people.
Oh, wow.
But he was never a prick about it. Like, that's the thing. When you say Carlos Mencia was such a fucking prick that now when we talk about joke thievery, when you mention a comedian, the instinct is to think that comedian is now a fucking prick. And it's not always as simple as I heard your joke and I took it, fuck you. Sometimes it's you have a fucking amazing comedic mind that works like a sponge and absorbs everything that's around.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you and I have both thrown out other people's jokes thinking that it came from our head.
Dude, I did it 2 weeks ago. It happened 2 weeks ago to me. I was with Shay. She was over and she was doing the green screen test for the thing. And I showed her a Mystery Science kind of thing where it's me and Manx making fun of an industrial short. And there was a joke in there that, and I told you this, I think like last week.
You told me on the phone.
I did a joke on this thing that was on an episode of Mystery Science that I didn't see, but I'm now thinking about it because she was like, no. She found it on YouTube, pointed it at, and I was like, and you're just like, well, did I actually steal it, or did I is it really that fucking collective unconscious thing, or is it really that I stole it and just forgot and I did actually see it? Certainly possible. There's another joke that I actually found out that a lot of people came up with that I did on stage. It was Steve Martin did a version of it. Amy Schumer did a version of it. Julie, I always forget her name. She's a brilliant comic, but anyway. The joke is, why do men, essentially the engine of the joke is why do women who ate it being put on pedestals, and then last minute they realize, oh, he's just looking at my dress. So again, it's one of those things where I hadn't seen I hadn't seen Amy Schumer, but a lot of people had made that joke too. So there is a collective unconscious, and there is something to be said for that. But at the same time, it's one thing when you're getting mad at Carlos Mencia, who was openly a prick about it. And another thing when you're giving Amy Schumer crap because she hires a right staff. And by the way, comedians, I'll tell this, comedians don't really talk about how openly disdainful a lot of comedy writers are towards comics. There was in the 90s, in 1990, they had to bar several comics who were also writers on In Living Color because they just took premises from black comedians, and then the next thing you know, they were sketches. So, there's a weird kind of like jealousy that goes on where it's like, I make my comedy but you get to go out and perform it. So there's like a weird, well, I can fix it and make it better so I can be, and so there's a weird, I've heard a lot of comedians say that when the whole thing with Schumer being a joke thief came up, which is that there's a long history of sketch writers that steal from comics all the time because A, they don't care, or B, they figure no one will ever see. That was a comedy club in New York City at 9 p.m.
So when you said hiring comedy writers, you meant for her show, not
Right.
for her stand-up.
Right. Yeah.
Because it used to be pretty common practice that the big stand-up acts would have writers writing their material for them.
That was fairly common in the old days. And also
nowadays, I don't think anyone could even fucking, like, they'd be ostracized from the community if they weren't doing their own material.
And if you look at Mulaney was one of the other comics who Schumer was accused of stealing from. I'm doing Mulaney right now. I'm just filling up in bread and seltzer. And are you guys going to just take a breath, John? But a lot of the thing, people said he stole from Mulaney, or she stole from Mulaney, and this and that. But if you actually look at the examples, they're not. It's like subject matter, and that's about it. And maybe one wording is similar. The other thing that people like to say that she stole from Patrice, but she didn't steal from Patrice. Patrice did a street joke. These things that everybody tells, common jokes. And Patrice just did it on this fucking after hours, dirty show. And she did it in a special. It was the same bit. I think it was the bit about the move where a guy's fucking a girl in the ass in front of a window on the ground floor. And then his friend comes in and sneaks in and waves at her on the other side. And it's called a Houdini.
Yeah.
So again, a lot of people get indignant about joke thievery that don't actually know what it is.
Yeah.
And I think I've told this story on TED, but I've actually had someone get in my face, told me that I stole something I did from
them or from something they had seen?
From something they had seen. And I did mention it on TED, I think. It was here in Atlanta. I did a stand-up set at a club that was not a comedy club. It was like a open mic poetry thing. And I told the story of getting the one time I'd ever seen Dice on stage.
Yeah.
And I apologize, you've heard the story, but for the sake of the audience, real quick, what happens essentially is Dice locally had decided he was just going to try working clean, but he didn't drop the act.
Same exact persona.
Right.
Just no F-bombs.
No, well, no, he's talking about being a dad and watching his kids, but he's still no F-bombs. Yeah, but there's a comedian named Tony Hinchcliffe who's pretty well known now. He's a good guy, but at the time he was hosting a lot at the Comedy Store. I knew him because he hosted the open mic. And so I'm there, and it's me and Stan Macy and a few other people that I was friends with at the time of the comics. And we're in the back and, watching, and Tony runs in and he's just like, "You guys, fucking Dice is here." And we're like all excited. And he's just like, he goes, "No, you guys got to really watch." We're like, "We know, it's fucking Dice." He goes, "No, you don't understand. He's on some weird kick." Like he had just gotten word from the...
I like how you just turned into Kramer. He's on some weird kick.
Yeah, I almost mentioned the Laugh Factory, so I mentioned Kramer, the Laugh Factory. Great moment in stand-up. I do like what Dave said about that. What Chappelle said about that when he was on... Chappelle was on the Laugh Factory stage, and he was just like, "I realized, though, when I saw that, I'm actually more comedian than I am black man." Because I was watching, I was like, "Ooh, don't let me get you, Kramer. Come on, man. Everyone can have a bad set." But no, the word was that he had been doing this at a couple other clubs. So Tony was like, "Dude, watch. This is really interesting because he's trying to work clean." And we were like, "Okay, well, he'll work clean." He goes, but Tony said, "No, you don't understand. There's these two Persian Jewish girls with their tits out in the front row. So there's no way he's going to make it." So we're watching the set, and me and like a couple of us, and we start placing bets as to how long it's going to take him before he fucking swears. And then eventually Dice literally tells this whole story about getting the bikes for the kids to go to the beach, and they won't. And then the second they get there, they run off and they forget, "What about the bikes?" Pause. And then he leans in and he just, "You big titted animal!" And the crowd goes crazy and he leaves. And so apparently that's also what happened at the Laugh Factory, where Jay Moore saw it happen and then he told it on his podcast. So this person alleged that I heard that episode of Jay's podcast and was just passing it off as my own experience. Which I wasn't.
And it's also like, hey,
Also, I tried my damnedest to find that episode. It took a minute. It took like almost a year. Like I stumbled on it. I'm listening.
So, did Jay Moore say that this happened in his living room? Or did he say that it happened in like a public place where like maybe other people
Yeah, exactly. Where it's like, but that was this guy's point. He was like, this didn't really happen because you just listened to this, his podcast. But it's like, but so you're telling me that I added extra personal stuff just to make it like, I don't know. I do know that,
Also, just going to put this out there. 90% of the time, stand-up comedians are lying to you. They didn't have these experiences. These are made-up stories. They may have a germ of truth in them, but if you've been watching Seinfeld and you think that everything in your stand-up comedy comes from what's going on in that's not how it works.
The only outrageous story I ever told, and it's not even that outrageous, that I ever told on stage that actually was true, was when I was dating a Hooters waitress and she dumped me because I was shitty to her. But it was when I was living in North Hollywood and selling weed. Medicinal.
At a dispensary.
At a delivery service, yeah.
I don't do co-hosting with drug dealing filth.
Okay, Nancy.
That was not Nancy.
I know, but still. Where was I?
Dealing weed.
I was dealing with, and so and I was bragging to my housemates. I was like, "You got to see this girl." And she comes over, and it's after her shift, so she's still in the outfit, and she's pouting, and like legit pouting, like.
So what were you like? You should really smile more.
Yeah, yeah. No, I wasn't that douchebag, but she said something that was to me so stupid that I had to just make fun of her. She's sitting there in the Hooters outfit and she goes, "I need a boob job." So I go, "Sweetie, Hooters is a boob job."
That's good.
It's a job that hires boobs like you to serve hot wings.
Oh, that went too far.
Well, that's why she dumped me. But yeah, that's the only time where the actual fucking thing that happened where I actually told
I mean, when I said, "Oh, that's good,"
that's where I should have stopped.
yeah, that's the stopping point. That's a good joke.
It worked on
and
the
then it
stage.
just got mean.
Well, yeah, but the point is that my persona on stage at the time was an unlikable misogynist. So it kind of worked. My character was an unlikable misogynist.
But
I based it on myself.
there it is.
But no, I did. But that was one of the only times. But you're right. You very rarely, the actual story is not actually what you
Yeah,
tell
I mean,
on
I don't
stage.
watch stand-up comedy and then go, like, "Oh my God, did you hear what happened to Louis C.K.?" So
I will tell you this, though. It has more of a big world feel to it than immediately stand-up. But if you're a stand-up fan, you notice this a little more, I think. Which is that everyone says this now. Oh, people are more sensitive. Everyone's more sensitive. But if you're into stand-up, that's where I think where you really notice it. Not for good or for bad, but you do notice people are, it's one of the oldest expressions about stand-up. Read the room. It's a fucking Twitter, saying now that people say, read the room. But it's a stand-up thing. Read the room. And the room, the country, is saying, hey, man, relax. All right? Enough with the gay jokes. Enough with the this jokes. Enough with the that. So, there's something to be said. I think it's cool that I'm not a fan personally of everyone getting more sensitive. And I don't buy into the idea that people say, oh, well, this would be great for you because, now you'll actually have to learn how to tell jokes without being dirty.
or offensive, at least.
Yeah, or as if it's so much easier with a few swear words. Like that's one of the best parts that Eddie Murphy had with the Cosby bit, where he's like, I didn't do no curse. You couldn't put on a curse show. I wouldn't be able to come out here and be like, hey, good evening, everybody. Dick, pussy, snot, and shit. Suck my dick. Good night. Like I managed to squeeze some jokes in the middle there, So, I mean, it's definitely an interesting time for stand-up.
But, I think the things that people will accept, socially speaking, are always in flux, and they're always going in that one direction. So, I bet in the 50s, you could get up and tell jokes about how black people just sit on their porch and eat watermelon, and it would kill.
Do you remember how when we were kids, we used to see, like when we were in 9th grade, we would watch a movie on TV and we'd be surprised if they said, God damn it. But then when we were in our 20s, we would be surprised to see Comedy Central run a movie after midnight uncut. And so the idea was always like, one day we're just going to be able to go fucking hog wild. And the exact opposite happened.
Well, not really. I mean, you say shit at 4 p.m. on TV now.
Well, yeah, but not even regular TV. It has to be cable.
They say
I'm not watching much network, so I really...
They say shit on a lot of things where I'm surprised that they say shit. Like, I remember
like
when...
The View?
I remember when NYPD said shit once at 11 p.m. and everyone lost their fucking minds.
So much so that South Park made a parody episode where they said shit like 300 times.
And now there's shit everywhere. They say shit all the time on TV. It's completely accepted.
But it's
where things are getting more sensitive is where it's like, you know what? Maybe just the fact that is a gay person isn't a joke.
Yeah, because it's so... Well, because before it was a novelty and you had to be in like some kind of group that has gay people in it.
Maybe the people that were making these jokes about are actual people that have feelings and who may be genuinely hurt by these things that we're saying. And it doesn't mean you can't make a joke about that topic, but you can do it in a way that isn't derogatory.
I like, yeah.
So I've mentioned this to you personally a million times, but Jessica and I are binge watching through Seinfeld. And we're in season 3. And
So you're not really binging it. If you were binging it, you'd already watched the whole thing by now.
well, no, we're watching like several episodes a day.
I guess
That's fucking binging, man.
I guess that qualifies. Several beers a day is binging.
I mean, anything more than once a week is a binge, really.
I guess that's fair, yeah.
But we're in season 3, and there's an episode called The Suicide, where Jerry's neighbor attempts to commit suicide. And they end the episode with Jerry's stand-up saying, like, you know what I don't get? People that attempt suicide but don't succeed. And then they just stop.
Yeah.
Like, why give up?
Yeah.
Keep trying.
There's only one conclusion.
Like, this is just another thing you're bad at. And like, it ended with Jerry Seinfeld, like the cleanest comedian of the 20th century, really advocating for people that try to commit suicide to just keep trying until they get it right.
Right.
And we're watching it going, oh no.
Well, see, that's a kind of comedy that's going away. And it was very commonplace. And what it was is ludicrous. The ludicrousness of something. In other words, one of my favorite,
Not the rapper.
Right. One of my favorite stories about this is, again, we're getting into territory about, gay people and all this other stuff. Tracy Morgan had to go on an apology tour because of a joke that he allegedly made about wanting to stab his son if he found out he was gay. And he had to go on this whole apology tour. And this is, again, the whole not understanding or even caring what context is. Because the joke was a punchline to a much longer bit about how black people are the trendsetters of the community and how isn't it funny that in this one area, homophobia, we are way behind. He's like, you never thought in a million years a white man would be ahead of you on some shit like that. But nope. That white man has no problem with the gay dudes. Us, we start acting all crazy and start quoting scripture. The bit is all about how, they're phobic. But then he's like, but the second it becomes real, but if my son was gay, I'd stab that little nigga. The whole thing is about how, we all have to fucking take our own responsibility. But the second it becomes your turn to be responsible, fuck that, you get all homophobic. That was the bit. It was about how homophobic the black community was at the time. You don't hear any of that. He had to go on an apology tour.
Well, yeah, you know what his apology tour should have been? Play the whole clip.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're not going to
I'm not
hear any arguments from me
No.
on how shit needs to be taken in context, because context is fucking king. I've said that my whole goddamn life.
And Patrice, again, the great Patrice O'Neill, one of the things that he said on Opie and Anthony in like 2006, and it's so true. He goes, you need to be careful. Context is going away, dude. Context is being destroyed. Any minute now, it's not going to matter what you meant. And in a lot of ways, we're there now. In a lot of ways, thankfully not at all.
Yeah, dude, I see people on the internet like getting mad at someone for something they said, right? When what they're doing is saying, oh my God, look how bad it is that this other person said this.
Right. Right. Why should you go to jail for for a crime someone else noticed? 1-800 blah, blah, blah.
It's literally like, at this point, if someone says, look, Hitler was full of shit when he said all Jews should be exterminated. And then Bob said all Jews should be exterminated.
Yeah. Well, you did say that. We're quoting. Cleese had a great take on all of this, and he's right about most things. He said that all humor, he goes, if you're upset that a joke is criticizing something, then you don't understand humor, because all humor is critical. He goes, I'll give you an example. He made a great example. He goes, here's a joke that you might think is innocuous, but is actually critical. It's that old joke of, how do you make God laugh? Tell him your plans. Now, it's a super easy G-rated bullshit joke, but no one's going to think you're criticizing in that joke, but it's a critical joke. It's making fun of the human condition. It's saying, we think we're all that in a bag of chips, that we believe in God and that we're tiny, but we have all these ideas about what we're going to do today. It's an inherent contradiction, and it's criticizing. So every joke is going to have something critical at its core. So you can't get mad at that. You can't get mad at that saying this joke. I'll tell you my favorite gay joke because it's not actually a gay joke. It's two gay guys are sitting at home. It's a Saturday night. They want to go out, but it is pissing down raining. They're not going anywhere. So the first one says to the second one, all right, how about we play hide and go seek? And if you find me, you can fuck me. And the first one goes, okay, but it's a really big house. I mean, what if I can't find you? And he goes, I'll be behind the couch. That joke is not about gay dudes. That joke's about men. Gay, straight, club, rainy, hide and go seek. We just want to fuck. We just want to fuck. Call it what you want.
Yeah.
And even though no one's getting mad, no heterosexual man would get mad at that, it is criticizing men.
The seeker could be a woman.
Yeah.
And the joke plays out the same.
Mm-hmm. But it is. It's critical. It's criticizing the human condition.
Yeah. But where I think now you do have these situations where like in the Tracy Morgan thing, the context is removed. Mm-hmm. They take this bit and put it on its own island and judge that island without looking at the sea around it. It's a terrible metaphor, but
it's forest for the trees.
The point is made.
It's trees for the forest is what it is.
The point is made, but there is such a thing as like just ignorant bullshit stand up where, you know,
like Kramer screaming the N-word.
That's not, no.
I don't know where he thought he was going with that bit.
Unless that was his planned bit. It's not the point I'm making.
There's other clubs you could do.
You know, I'm sure you can find from the very recent past a lot of stand-up about transgender people. You know, like, why would you want to cut your dick off? Or like some bullshit that makes no attempts to like understand these people. But, you know, as we learn more about various things, we understand more as a people.
And in turn, there's more stuff to make jokes about.
Right. But the better ways to make the jokes.
That's the way I should have said it. Yes.
Right. You know, that's the thing. And I feel like you and I just 5 years ago having this conversation, the whole thing would have been very different. It would have gone a lot different.
Very different.
But you know, just in the last few years, I mean, I've come to learn a lot more about the transgender community, for example. I've come to learn a lot more about the experience of all kinds of people that are outside of my cisgendered, white, privileged male, blah, 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 heterosexual experience.
And even just being friends with people like that, is not enough. It's, you know, because sometimes you gotta have conversations. You can have conversations, but sometimes you realize after like a year or two, you have like a major conversation with someone. You're like, I barely even fucking know you. Yeah,
like after 28 years, you find out someone has a photographic memory.
I have a phonographic memory.
Oh, yeah.
I can only play fucking 45s, but I can, the whole thing.
78s for me.
78s, okay.
So
I'm ready to wrap this up if you are.
Me too, but I think it's important that we recognize that we came to an agreement on the idea that while... You know what? I'm gonna bring up Glenn Danzig real quick. I saw a tweet where Glenn Danzig said the Misfits and the whole punk movement could not happen today because of all this cancel culture bullshit. And someone responded to him and said, Glenn, 2 weeks ago, a gay gangster rapper did a lap dance on Satan.
That's punk as fuck.
Shut the fuck up.
All right, guys. See ya.
Hasta la. See you later. Oh, that's that exit. I just slid out of the frame.